Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This morning, we'll be talking about live tracking and reporting with Structure for Jira. Structure for Jira, I'll assume that all of you know that it's a product from ALMworks, and that's why you're here today, to learn more about this formula feature. Our presenter is Eugene Sokhransky. Eugene wears many different hats here at ALMworks. He's a product expert, head of support, and a business development manager. He's been with he's been with ALMworks for a long time now. In fact, he was around for the introduction of the first version of Structure. So he is truly one of our product experts, having worked with the product for many years. Eugene, over to you.
Hi, Dave. Thanks for the introduction. Hello, everyone. It's good to have you here. It's nice to have so many people joining. I really hope my presentation today will be useful. And you are encouraged to ask any questions you might have through our Q&A chat or just after the presentation. There were actually a couple of things we wanted to mention before we jump in. So there is a Q&A section on your screen down at the bottom. You can use it to send over your questions to us, and I'll try to answer them the best I can at the end of the webinar. And it will also be recorded, so we'll be able to distribute the link to whoever will want to rewatch it or send it to someone else later. So yeah, let's jump into the subject. Today we are talking about reporting in Jira, and I wanted to start with a really brief overview of what options are available in Jira. Because Jira itself has a lot of data in it as it is, and depending on how much data you want to put in there, it has all the options for it. So you can create all kinds of custom fields. You can use Jira standard fields. So if you're willing to do very detailed estimates, track time, you can have it all there. The question is how to extract it from Jira later and how you want to present it to someone, to your manager, to yourself. And there are many different ways to do it. So first thing, there is out-of-the-box Jira reporting. And standard Jira reports work really nicely for agile teams. Basically, if you're following the agile process closely to what the tool was designed for, you have really nice reports. It can get a bit trickier once you get to larger projects or when you need to oversee multiple projects working together, multiple teams working together, because there is no way to sort of create the hierarchical view of everything. You can, of course, create the report for just some subset of issues, some results of a JQL query, but it's not always meaningful because if you have several thousands of issues, probably not all of them are the same, and they may have different meaning for you. Like epics are different from stories, initiatives are different from epics, and all of that usually needs to be taken into account when you're producing a report. But there are other tools that help you expand on reporting. There are really nice visual tools, the EasyBI, or for example, Arsenal Data Plane. These are the ones that give you really nice visuals. EasyBI is super flexible, can be a bit tricky to set up, but in our experience, their support is really great at helping people out. So if you need some diagrams and things like that, you can definitely try those. And another thing we frequently see with our clients is the usage of scripted fields, which can be supported by Script Runner, by Adaptivist, or C' Power Scripts. And both of these tools are really nice, and they allow you to build some reports with some custom logic, so you can calculate the values for custom fields based on different conditions. So again, if you need some customization, if you need to inject some rules into your report, this is a great way to do it. And all these things work together nicely. It's not that you just choose one and you have to stick to it. Depending on your needs, depending on the use cases, you combine them and use them together. And then there is structure. That's something we're going to talk about today. So what makes structure different from everything else, and what makes it special? There are a few things. I hope everyone is familiar, at least somewhat familiar, with the product. Essentially, it's a tool that allows you to build hierarchies of issues and show some data for these hierarchies. So there are actually three important things that I wanted to mention from the start. So first of all, structure gives you a really nice way to define the scope. So the hierarchies represent your work. Again, as I've mentioned, if it's a large scope of work, it's probably going to be broken down into smaller and smaller tasks, and it makes sense to visualize it in a hierarchical view. And then you can get more meaningful reports if you have that kind of view. Plus, structure allows you to adjust it really quickly, change the issues you are seeing, add something, remove something, and I'll show that briefly a bit later. And then structure offers a really powerful set of columns or structure attributes, as we call them, which allow you to, first of all, visualize your Jira data like custom fields, but also we have a number of custom columns that allow you to show more complex things. And another important aspect is that structure shows you the real Jira data. So everything is updated in real time, both the hierarchies and data. So this means you always have the latest information. You don't have to wait for anything to sync. So let's take a look at these things in more details. So first of all, let's talk about defining the scope. It's not going to be the primary topic today, but for those who haven't seen how it works, I want to give a brief introduction to what we have. So our really powerful feature that offers you an ability to build these dynamic structures, self-updating structures, it's called automation. And the way it works, you basically define a number of rules based on which your hierarchies are built. So let me show you real quick how in just a few seconds and a few clicks, we can get a nice view like we are seeing here now. So for this example, I'm using a very common scenario that we often see when you have several teams working together. They have their own projects. They have the stories created for them, for the teams. The stories implement epics that are shared between the teams. And then there are initiatives that are implemented by these epics. And initiatives and epics are linked with just a Jira link type. This is a fairly common situation that we see a lot with our customers. So if you want to produce a nice report on that data, you certainly need to have a way to visualize it. So let's do it with structure. Let's create a new empty structure. And again, I won't go into details. I'll just show you how quickly it can be done. So we want to pull in all the issues and have the hierarchy. So we can start by pulling in the initiatives. This is just one example. We want to see what epics implement these initiatives. We do that by adding another rule. And so after we add the rule, you can see we got the epics pulled in. Then we pull in a similar fashion the stories under the epics. And then we can get the subtasks. So as you can see, it's really easy to visualize things with structure. And then we can also order everything by rank, which usually makes a lot of sense if you're using Jira software. So you have this interactive hierarchy now. And now you can try to build some reports based on this hierarchy where you'll be able to quickly get to the level you want, whether you want to see some details on just the initiative level, or you want to go down to the epic level, go to the story level, or just drill down for a particular epic further down. So this is just one example. There's a way to build another view for the same set of issues, which also can be useful, again, just to demonstrate you the flexibility. Let's do it slightly differently. Let's start by pulling in our stories. So it will be easier to do it with using jQuery. So do that. And we don't want subtypes. Yeah. So we got the stories pulled in, and now we may want to see the distribution of the stories by some fields. So for that, we can use our grouping functionality. So we can group them by sprints, for example. And then we can do reports for sprints because we have the sprint in the hierarchy. We can do some calculation for the sprint based on the stories which belong to the sprint. Or we can do nested grouping, so we can further group by assignee and then see how the tasks are distributed per person per sprint. We can reverse the order, get this kind of view. We can group further if we want to by fixed version, for example. So it has a lot of flexibility, and as you can see, it's really easy to do it. Alternatively, right now, this is the hierarchy that we've built, and we can share it with other users. Alternatively, you can, maybe you have the hierarchy which is close to what you need. Maybe it's even a flat list. We also have an option to apply these rules just for the user. So imagine you have the view that is close to what you need, but you want to quickly adjust it. So for that, we have quick transformations. You can think of them as like quick filters from Jira on steroids. So you can do basic stuff like filtering. I can quickly see unresolved issues or issues assigned to me. But we also can apply the same rules we had in automation, so we can quickly group things. We can pull in the subtasks, for example, by just clicking this button and see how that affects our report. So we have all that flexibility, and it's really easy to use. So you can play with your data in this nice and convenient way. So now let's talk about the columns that we have, structure attributes. There are several types that we introduce. Well, first of all, as I mentioned, you can just show custom fields from Jira, but then you can do all kinds of actions with them. So first thing is aggregation. You can calculate totals for numeric fields. We have customizable progress. We have work logged column, and then we have formulas, which is the most powerful of them all. So let's take a slightly closer look at all of them. So totals, they can be shown for any numeric field. So let's switch to some nicer structure with this, similar to what we've just built. And imagine, so we have initiative here, for example, and we haven't done any estimates, or we haven't, we're not tracking any time on the initiative level. It just represents a big piece of work. And we want to see some data for this initiative based on the data that is stored in the epics and stories which implement it. So it's really easy to see, for example, total remaining estimate, right? So you can add standard Jira field. So this is just Jira custom field, remaining estimate. And if I want to see the totals, I just select the checkbox. We have a couple of further options like exclude duplicates. So issues can be present in the same hierarchy multiple times, depending on the view you're building. So if you don't want to count them twice, you can check that. And also you can decide whether you want to do totals for the visible part of the structure or the structure in general. What I mean is, for example, we have a story here which has 2 hours of remaining estimates. If we use this quick transformation to hide unresolved, you see the value, the total value here gets adjusted because we did hide some of the issues. Or we can remove this checkbox, and then it will always show us the same number regardless of the transformations that we applied on top. So this is the first thing, totals, and it's already pretty powerful. So it allows you to see some summaries for higher level issues, even though those issues may not have any data of their own. So next thing will be the progress column. We also try to make it flexible enough so you can calculate progress based on a number of things. You can use time tracking. If you don't use time tracking, maybe use story points, then you can use maybe resolution and select story points as the weight. So the closed task will contribute more or less to the progress based on their size. You can, if you use nothing at all, you can use status, for example. So you can decide the completion percentage for each status, and then it will be calculated based on the statuses of your issues. Again, if you want, you can use story points as weight, or maybe maybe you can consider all issues equal. And like I mentioned, progress and everything else, it's updated in real time. So for example, we're doing progress by status. Let's change the progress for one of the issues. By the way, that's another cool feature of structure. You can update fields right in the spreadsheet, so including status if it doesn't require any input on the transition screen. So as I change the status of the issue, you see the progress gets updated as well. So everything you see is the real data that you have in Jira. And once I change something in structure, I also change the real Jira data. Okay, so another really useful column a few people know about is work logged. So you can show the time spent, of course. You can show the total time spent, which is just the Jira field, Jira data. But we also have a custom column that allows you to show work logged, which is a little bit more complicated, because you can show it. You can define for which period you want to aggregate the time, the logs of work. So you can say, let's show it for this week, and you can decide for which user. So this will give you a more granular view of your time spent. For example, if we change it to month, you will see that it changes. Yeah, so now it's 4 days. And it can be a running period like this month, or you can just go for a custom period. So just define specific dates. And you can have as many columns as you need for these purposes. So you can build, for example, a report for this month for different users. Or you can also use, apart from users, you can use Jira groups or project roles. So that can be really useful too. But the real power for reporting purposes in structure lies in the formulas feature. So what are formulas? We created the column that allows you to write Excel-like formulas using our own language called Expr. And you can use any structure columns, any structure attributes as variables in these formulas. And then you can decide how you want to format the output. And it also has a really powerful feature of wiki markup. So let's take a look at what it's like. I won't go into too many details, but I wanted just to give you some general understanding how it works. We have really detailed documentation on formulas that you can refer to later. So let's remove some of these columns and add a formula column. And let's do something very simple. For example, let's see how, so we have some original estimates, and then we have remaining estimates and time spent. So let's see if we are exceeding our original estimate. So as we type so we can just type the field name with this underscore, and structure will try to match it, to map it to existing custom fields. And if it does successfully, we'll see the result. If it doesn't, it will ask us to select which field you actually meant, which attribute. So here we want to see original estimate minus remaining. Oh, I'll actually keep it this way and see if it catches. Plus time spent. So let's save it. Oh, it actually mapped everything correctly. We just need to change the format to duration, because that's what we are counting. But if you want to change it later, you can click any variable and see what field it got mapped to. So now we can see the numbers here, right? So we have 3 hours left here, so we're fine, but we have minus 12 hours here. It means we are off. It can be useful and nice this way, but imagine we have a really large structure, too many numbers to just be looking at these little details. We want a higher level view. So we can easily, instead of the number, show maybe some indicator. So for that, we can use some logical functions which are available in formula. So we can do a simple if clause. So let's say if original estimate is less than 0, we want to put at risk. Otherwise, we put okay. See how that works. Nice. Oh, and actually, since we don't have values for initiative, for example, we may want to see the totals coming from what's below the initiative, because for the initiative, we want to get this value based on what's under it. So to do that, we can actually use aggregation functions in formulas. So we can do the sum of all these values. And that will give us a better understanding. So, okay, our initiative is actually at risk based on the values of its children. But we can take it even further. So this is good enough visual indication, but it can be better. So recently we've introduced an ability to use wiki markup for highlighting things in a really nice way. So it can be something fairly basic. So we can just add some color to our formula. So let's do that first. So color. Oh. Did I do something wrong? Oh, okay. That should be fine. Oh, and we should select wiki markup here. So now it's getting more exciting, but we can push it even further and get really creative with wiki markup. I won't be explaining in details how you can do that. I've prepared a couple of examples. So you can actually use images in wiki markup, so you can get really nice view, something like that. Let me just copy paste it. And you'll see what it looks like. We can produce a really nice looking status column. So to build this, it requires a little bit of time and trial and error, but we'll be happy to help. You can always contact our support team who can help you with producing something nice like this. Plus we have documentation. If you actually click to edit your formula, there is this little question mark, which you can use to access our documents, which has the explanation of how it works, reference of all the functions, aggregate functions, and several examples. It also has examples for wiki markup formulas. So you can use them as a reference to build your own. I wanted to show you one more example of wiki markup usage, which I think is really cool. So you can go really deep with it. And we have this progress column here, which uses some predefined values, plus you can use % custom fields. But if you want to progress, for example, with more complex logic, you can build it using formulas. So here is an example of, for example, we want to see the distribution of issues by status in a nice bar, which will be split in sections. So you can build a formula for that too. So let me show you what it's going to look like. So let's add another formula column. Keep the wiki markup. And now we have this really nice view. So as you can see, it's pretty powerful. Once you create too many columns, it might get a bit narrow. So for that, we've added horizontal scrolling feature, also fairly recently. So now you can, if you're working with too many columns, you can use that. And yeah, now everything fits and you can scroll and see everything you may need. So I hope that gives you some general understanding of the formula feature. Again, if you want something more tricky, feel free to contact us and we'll be happy to help. And again, everything is updated in real time, as I've already mentioned. So whichever formula you built. So the next question is, where do you show your reports once you've built them? So the first thing is obviously the structure board. That's where we are now. You can share them with other people. You can actually use the share link to create sort of the snapshot of your view. So it will remember which issues were expanded or collapsed, which view you had selected, which columns you had, and then the person who opens this link will see exactly the same view as you are seeing. You can also put structures on dashboards, so that makes it really convenient. And actually on the dashboard, structure is interactive, so you can click and expand things and dig deeper. So if you see some initiative is not far enough, like the progress is not good enough, you can dig deeper and see why, find the issues which are holding you back. You can even modify some things here, so it's editable. You can also insert structures on wiki pages. So this is what we see a lot of people do. So they have some wiki page with project status report. So you can insert a structure in there. You can select which structure you want to see. So let's just use the same one, the view. There are a few other parameters. Once you do it, it's loaded. And once you save the page, you see it here. And again, structure will update in real time as your Jira data updates. So you will always see the actual results. There's no need to sync anything. So it's all here. Right, one thing I forgot to mention, you can also export structures to Excel, and that will produce really nice Excel files. So let's see how that works. So if you can't get some calculations with formulas done, but you are close to that, you can export to Excel. This will give you a nice Excel file with all the columns that you had. It even keeps the hierarchy. So if you want to do some hierarchy-based calculations, it's all there too. Yeah, and then you can share the report with whoever maybe doesn't have access to your Jira, or just do some further analytics in there. Okay. So to recap, what structure offers is a lot of flexibility. Using formulas, you can really create metrics that may use your Jira data in some less conventional way. So maybe you're using estimates on different levels for different purposes, and Jira doesn't always allow you to report that way. Like maybe your epic estimates are just preliminary estimates and you don't want to count them when you're doing the report. So whatever logic you have in there, you can incorporate it in formulas. It gives you a really nice way to adjust the scope that you're looking at, build the structures, quickly change them, update them. Everything is updated in real time, which is also really important. You can squeeze in a lot of things in one compact report, and we've seen a lot of people do that. Actually, horizontal scroll was a request from quite a few companies, especially in financial sector, which needed 20, 30 columns together with some important data. And also another important thing, which I think makes it really useful, is that you don't really need admin permissions to get this report. So unlike some scripted fields maybe, where someone needs to create them for you, or if you need to tweak it, you will need to ask someone to do it for you. Here, you can just write your own formulas in the columns as long as you have access to structure. You can get all these reports done yourself. So I think that's also a fairly important thing. And so that's pretty much it I had in mind for today. I hope it gave you some general idea of what you can do with formulas. Again, as I mentioned, feel free to contact us at support@elmworks.com at any time if you need any help with formulas. We also have pretty good documentation, which you can find using the link on the screen, or you can access it from the formula dialog as I've shown you. It has the reference for all the functions. And I'll be happy to answer any questions people have.
All right. and we have a number of them, Eugene. So the first question is from Aurelia. We have a Jira instance with over 1,000 projects. Should we be worried about performance if structure is activated and available for all projects?
So performance is a tricky question because it's hard to give one simple answer, yes or no. It really depends on how people use structure. So I wouldn't be too worried if you use it wisely. So you can define permissions on different levels. So you can define who can view structures in general for the instance. So for example, you can give view permissions to all the users and enable it for all the projects, but you can allow to create structures only to a handful of users who know how to do things right. Then you can define who can use automation mechanism. And that's actually, in terms of performance, automation is probably the main thing here, because with automation, it's really easy, as you've seen, to build really big and complex structures. If you do it right, there shouldn't be any serious issues. We have customers who have 50,000 issues in some structures. It takes some time to load, but it works fine. Plus, we have recently introduced a mechanism that will stop generation if someone by mistake creates some structure which is way too large. So it shouldn't affect your Jira instance stability in general. You will be just prompted to adjust your settings. Like the most general and short answer I can give regarding performance, try to keep structures that you use every day smaller, and structures that you're going to use for reporting across multiple projects, they can be big, but make sure that they're accessible only to people who really need to see them, and developers don't use them every day to look at their tiny subset of issues. Like, don't give a developer a structure with 50,000 items so he can look at his 10 tasks in it. Make a separate one for the developer. So that would be the answer. Actually, calculations themselves are usually not as performance heavy as building the hierarchy. So again, we'll be happy to provide any suggestions if you come to us and give us a few more details on your use cases.
And I don't want to embarrass myself by mispronouncing this person's name, so I'm not even going to try. I'm sorry. But he's asking, or she's asking, what is the issue above an epic?
Oh, so it's, in our case, we just created an issue called initiative, just chose some nice icon for it. So it's nothing that structure provides. You can define it in Jira. So structure just helps you visualize Jira data. So what we've done there, actually, let me switch back, or it's called theme. So it's basically just a normal issue type, just like any other. It's not like an epic or subtask. It's just like stories, tasks, bugs. We just called it initiative. And we decided that we're going to use a Jira link that we created, we called it implements, to connect initiatives to epics. And then structure allows us to visualize it really nicely visually. So you see here we have a number of issues linked to this issue, but otherwise it's no different. It's like nothing, there's no special logic behind it built into Jira. But structure allows you to work with them really nicely, as you can see, and get this really nice visualization of the whole work breakdown structure.
Another question from Aurelia. How can I display a calculated field like WSGIF built with script runner in a structure?
So when it comes to showing some third-party add-ons, fields, and structure, it really depends on the particular scenario. Sometimes it just works out of the box and you just add it as any other field. Sometimes it doesn't. Let me see if I have some examples here. So we have integration with X-Ray. I'm not sure though 100% that the versions I have here are compatible, but let's see. Yeah, it works. So X-Ray, they have a custom field that shows status. And this particular one was not working in the beginning in structure, so it required a few tweaks on our side and something on their side to make it work. But as you can see now, it works. So it really depends on the add-on. I'm not sure if, I think the calculated fields should show up just fine in structure. If they don't, please let us know and we'll take a closer look. And this applies to any other third-party add-on that provides some data in Jira. Sometimes it works, sometimes, depending on how it's implemented, it may show up or not. For example, we know that tempo teams are right now showing as IDs versus tempo names because they do rendering on their side. So at some point we'll need to address that, either them or us. So.
Okay. A question from Alexander. What about updating statuses within structure? Are there validations, post functions, transition screens, or is it just a direct update to the database?
Oh, it's not a direct update to the database. As I've mentioned, if there is some validation that should happen or a transition screen, it will not work. It will just tell you, sorry, like, and you would have to, we actually have in structure the option of using standard Jira menu, so you can use this one to quickly change the status. But if the status change does not require anything, you can just use the inline editing. Yeah.
Okay. Next question. What about calculating custom fields?
So you can use any Jira custom fields in your formulas, and we have functions both for numbers, for text. You can convert them for the duration, for the dates. So yeah, custom fields are supported. If it's like number custom fields, for example, there isn't any problem at all. So basically, any field that you can show in the column and structure, you can use it in the formula.
And I think this is really a very similar answer to this question. How do you customize feature described by a saved object in Jira so that you can see it in structure?
I'm not sure I understand this 100%. So if the question is about how to make features show up instead of epics, there are a number of ways to solve this. It's actually, for formulas, for structure, it doesn't really matter what issue types you use. It just shows Jira data and relations between it. So it's more the question of setting it up in Jira itself. And if actually you're trying to rename issue types in Jira based on safe, I would recommend checking out cprime epic to feature translator add-on, which does that really well. Because there are some workarounds for that. Most of them will still have some things you will need to tweak, like some JavaScript stuff. So if you really need a full-fledged solution, I think their add-on is probably the best for that. Or like you can do even simple translations in Jira, and in that translation call feature epic and epic feature. But again, for structure, it doesn't really matter. We can visualize the Jira links, epic links, subtasks. We also have support for, if you're using portfolio, we can also visualize portfolio parent link. So all that is available. So again, it's more a question of Jira configuration.
Okay. Is it possible to see dependencies between issues depending on a time referential?
Time referential. So, like if you want to compare, if there are two issues which depend on each other and there is some due date they both have, and you want to make sure that one doesn't start before the other one finishes. So there are a few things you can do there. So first of all, we have an extension for structure called Structure Gantt, which helps you with visualizing everything on the timeline. And it's actually a free extension right now, and it's gonna be, if you apply for the license today, you will get a 2-year license for free. We plan to introduce some price for it with the release of version 2, which will have a fair bit of new features in it. But basically, it's a great way to visualize your work, track dependencies, make sure that your deliveries are on time. You can also, so it will calculate, for example, based on the dependencies, it will show you, let's see, this issue, for example, is scheduled It depends on the previous issue, and its start and finish date are calculated based on its estimate and the dependencies that exist. If the task it depends on shifts forward, this one also will shift forward, and we calculate the start and finish date based on that. In version 1.4 that's coming out, you'll be able to see these calculated dates in the structure and then use them in formulas going forward. So that could be a good combination for implementing something like that.
All right, the next two questions are about, will there be a recording of the webinar available? The answer is yes. It'll be available in 1 to 2 business days on our YouTube channel. And everyone who registered or attended the webinar will get an email with a link to that video. Question for you, Eugene. Is there Structure for Confluence, a separately licensed plugin from Structure for Jira?
So actually, inserting structure in a Confluence page requires nothing. It's just a Confluence gadget that we have, and it comes with structure. So it works just like any other Jira gadgets that you can show in Confluence. So to do this, you don't need anything. What we do have as a separate extension is structure.pages, which is a separate add-on which allows you to show Confluence pages inside inside your structures. So the way it works, like you can see here, we have a page from Confluence. You can see its content, you can edit it. You can pull in linked issues. So we have a couple of issues linked to this page. Structure automatically can pull them in our hierarchy, and you can combine your tasks and your documents together in the same hierarchy. So this is a separate add-on, but you don't need it to be able to just show structures here on the wiki page. That just works as it is.
And Manfred asked the same question, so we've just answered him. Then Amy's asking, is it possible to run JQL queries based on a formula column?
So currently it is not possible, and all the calculations that you do, they stay in structure. You can see them on the dashboard. You can also actually, I haven't mentioned one thing. So if you open an issue page, you can see structure there as well. So you can select some important view here and get all the values here as well. Plus you can see it on the dashboard. So we try to make structure accessible from pretty much any important screen in Jira. But we do have plans to introduce JQL, ability to run JQL for structure. We actually have a query language extension for structure. Currently it allows you to run queries like, give me all the issues in the structure which have a parent in a certain status, something like that. You can do that already. It's called SJQL. Again, if you go to our documentation, you can read more about it. Structured JQL. We also plan to introduce ability to run queries against formula results, like give me all the issues where the formula column this says that. Plus, we are currently working on a feature that will allow you to copy results of, to copy pretty much any structure attribute like progress or the dates coming from Gantt or formula results into custom fields in Jira. So what you'll be able to do is set up either scheduled updates or just do them on demand and push the calculated value that you've calculated in structure into some Jira custom field, and then you'll be able to query those custom fields. So okay. That's something coming later this year.
This was a great webinar, thank you. Is there any plan to do something similar for advanced structure users?
Sure, actually, if you can send us the topics that you'd like us to cover, we'll be happy to incorporate that there. What we can do is probably a webinar aimed more at Jira admins, where we could cover some best practices, some performance considerations, some ideas for rolling out structures, so that we can definitely do that. And I think the webinar format will be good. Like 1 hour should be a good time to cover that. I think that could be really helpful. If you have any other suggestions for the topics, please let us know and we'll be happy to cover them. So it's, we do have a few webinars, I think, scheduled further down the road. Some of them are with participation of our partners. But again, if anyone has any topics you would like us to cover, we'll be happy to do that.
So the questions keep pouring in. So let me just mention quickly that if we don't get to answer your question live during the course of the webinar today, don't worry, we'll follow up with you via the email that you used to register for the webinar to answer your question. And as Eugene said a moment ago, you can always send an email to support@almworks.com to request, to get answers to questions or to request a specific kind of demo. A question that's a continuation of an earlier question. We're using Jira as a project management tool. We're using epics as separate new projects. I'm not sure if I'm getting this correct. And we have only 3 levels of hierarchy: epic, task, which is a story, and then subtask. Would we need at least 4 levels? Do we need greater than 4 levels? And is it possible to use structure with just the epic, story, task, subtask?
Oh, you can
Hierarchy.
use structure with any hierarchy. So again, structure, just to clarify, it's just helps you visualize the data that you have in Jira. And that's the beauty of it. So we take slightly different approach from Portfolio, for example, or a Big Picture, which built with some more kind of defined structure in mind. So in Portfolio, you should define the levels that you're going to have on your instance, and you will need to stick to that. With structure, you just visualize the existing dependencies. So if you have 3 levels with some links between them, or epic links or subtasks links, so it will all work. You can just visualize those. There's no requirement on your structure, on your data organization structure in Jira. And this is the big benefit. And you can have one project which has 10 levels because they need that, and the other project may have 3 levels, and yet you can combine everything. And depending on what kind of data you have, you can even do some formula calculations which will incorporate both parts. And if you know how to compare them, let's say, I don't know, one team is using story points, the other team is using hours. If you have the way, I mean, in general, in your setup, to convert them to a single unit, like you know that if this team has 10 story points to do, it means it will take them a week. And the other team just has 1 week estimate. So you can produce a report that will take both of those things into account and tell you, okay, we have 2 weeks left or 20 story points, whatever. So again, we offer this flexibility, and I think this is what makes structure different from some other solutions.
All right, and there are some structure cloud questions, but let's defer those to offline. We'll be happy to answer those questions for the folks that are asking about structure cloud provisions. Which version of structure did you demonstrate today? I think we have version 1.0 of structure cloud. That's an easy one to answer.
Oh, structure cloud. So structure cloud is going to be released publicly really soon.
Yes. Right
before the summit. It's going to be a fair amount more limited version of what you've just seen. We're just getting started. For us, it was a huge amount of work, which required rebuilding it pretty much from scratch. Well, not pretty much, from scratch, with a completely different set of technologies. So please don't expect the same level of flexibility and power from the cloud. But we have big plans for it, and we'll be adding new features based on the requests that we get. Actually, this product that you were just looking at, it was built to a large extent based on customer requests. So all the cloud users, if you're interested, please share your use cases, your requirements. We always take those into account when adding something. And that really helps us produce something that will be useful for everyone. By all means, try the cloud version. We'll be presenting it at the summit. I think, I'm not sure, Dave.
Yeah, if anyone is going to be at Summit, please stop by the booth. We'd be happy to show it to you and talk about some of the specific differences between server and cloud in the short term. And then also, another person is asking, do we plan to do a cloud webinar? And the answer is yes. It's not scheduled yet, but we do know that's one we need to do soon.
And we probably, if you want to try cloud already, you can send us an email and we'll help you with that as well.
That's right. Couple more questions and then we'll call it quits for today. But as I said, we'll answer all the questions, even if we don't do that verbally now. Is your WSGIF field calculated by Jira or a formula in structure?
Oh, it's calculated by formula. So let me jump back there. It's just, we have a number of bundled formulas, which are there just for, they're here for just, you know, to help you get started. And you can click the formula details to see how it's calculated. So this is just something we came up with as an example. So the way it works, just quick overview. You can, depending on the priority, it assigns a certain number to one variable. Then another one takes into account votes and watches. Checks if the due date is defined. So it basically takes a number of Jira fields and uses a certain formula, certain ratios. It applies them to these fields and then does the final calculation of WSGF. But everything happens here on the structure side. Everything happens in the column. So there are no scripts, nothing happening on the Jira side.
Quick question that I can answer as well is structured Gantt available now? I wasn't aware of this solution. And the answer is yes, it's available now. It was launched last February, so it's a year old now. But as Eugene said, currently structured Gantt is free. We do have plans when we release 2.0 to charge for structured Gantt. But anyone who starts using structured Gantt now will be able to have a free license for 2 more years. So structured Gantt is on the marketplace and very easy for you to find.
And one thing I want to add, we are about to release a new version, 1.4, which will support agile planning. So if you are interested in trying it, I think if you wait for about a week, you will get quite a good number of new features in that new version. So maybe it makes sense to wait just a little bit. You'll be able to visualize your stories based on their sprint data and a few other things. So just maybe subscribe to the app and check the release notes for the next release. It's really getting much more powerful, and there are a few more things coming in version 2. So
and structured Gantt 1.4, which is the version Eugene's referring to, will also be visible at Summit if you happen to be there. All right, let's wrap it up. We do have many more questions, but let's wrap it up for today. We'll answer all the questions, as I said, so please don't worry about that. Thank you, everyone, for attending. If you would just slide back up again.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Thank you, everyone, for attending. We really appreciate it. We encourage you to go to the Atlassian Marketplace, where Eugene was just a moment ago. And you can find there, a free version of Structure to try. You can also visit our website, where we have a sandbox server on our website for Structure Gantt, Pages, Testing. Those are all the extensions that we offer, where you can test the products without having to install any software on your systems. So thank you again, everyone.